Well, COVID-19 has proven that it intends to persist. Former advisors to President Biden recently released statements calling for a shift in national health strategy that takes the virus's long-term endurance more seriously. These scientists call for policies soberly reflective of the fact that the existence of SARS-CoV-2 represents a new normal. Other scientists have even begun to forecast a transition to endemicity. A pandemic ends either by wholesale eradication of the threat of illness, which for COVID again is looking less and less likely, at least in the near term, or by the pathogen continuing to circulate in a less pervasive form. An illness downgrades from pandemic to endemic status when counts of infections, hospitalizations, and deaths remain below a manageable threshold, not zero, but small enough not to constantly threaten healthcare systems. This happens when a large enough proportion of a population, a herd as we have been hearing, reaches immunity either through vaccination or natural infection. An article at healthline.com cited scientists who argue that the shift from pandemicity to endemicity may be coming relatively soon, due as it happens to the Omicron variant. Because this variant is highly transmissible but does not present such a severe threat like, say, Delta, it can be passed along to sufficiently large numbers of people who will recover from it and gain a measure of immunological memory. We'll see what materializes. Nobody knows exactly how this is going to unfold, but the consensus is that sooner or later we must come to terms with the reality that COVID-19 is here to stay. That entails a couple of things, I think. First, it entails a renewed sense of social responsibility. Whether it's COVID or chlamydia, the spread of infectious disease owes in large part to the decisions of the hosts who spread it. We can make choices to manage the risk, not just to ourselves, but also to those that we love and care about. Living over the long haul with a new disease means practicing humility and compassion. We live in an interconnected world and cannot behave as entirely disconnected individuals. We rely on each other 1,000 ways every day, on the work ethic of growers and producers, on the dedication of educators, the ingenuity of entrepreneurs, the justice of judges, the concern of medical professionals, the creativity of poets and authors and scientists, and on the thoughtfulness of the widest possible number of us, not to pose a harm to each other, to foster conditions where we all can flourish. That may mean donning a mask even after local mandates have ceased if I don't feel well, or taking the time to get tested, or just being willing to receive a vaccination. At the same time, secondly, accommodating the reality of enduring COVID means finding courage. Social responsibility over the long haul means being willing to maintain a public presence for the sake of a greater good when the virus remains a threat. It means recognizing that there are downstream consequences of simply shutting down businesses and schools, that it's not okay to demand that those whose livelihoods derive from restaurant work, for instance, must just constantly suffer closure, and that those who happen to be of school age must just endure lost learning. Again, the threshold of endemicity is not zero. We hope that risks will reduce over time as more and better medicines are developed, but there will always still be risks. About 40,000 people die every year on U.S. roadways, even though we drive safer vehicles. Yet each of us rightly takes the risk to drive or ride regularly. There is a social responsibility in going to work and making a contribution to wider human flourishing if we're healthy enough to do it. We can manage the risk. We can wear a mask like we wear a seatbelt, but we still have to take the risk. I hope that the church can lead in both directions as we make this transition to living with COVID over the long haul. Wouldn't it be something if the redemption of a diseased world turned out to come from the cultivation of a deep spirit of courageous love for our neighbor?